So I'll be honest with you, I'm still a little shocked this conversation even happened. Compass Pathways, the billion-dollar psychedelic pharmaceutical company, agreed to come on Divergent States. I don't know if they didn't Google us hard enough or they thought that this would be like an easy PR stop, but either way, here we are.
Yeah, honestly, I was expecting like a polite thanks, but no thanks the second you sent that email.
The same, but to their credit, they showed up. I mean, Kabir Nath, the CEO, and Dr. Steve Levine, their chief patient officer. We talked about FDA approval, access, cultural safety, and even the big question, are they here to disrupt the big pharma model or are they just a different flavor of it?
Hmm. You played it pretty cool. Or naive, I can't tell.
Well, maybe a little of both. But look, Divergent States isn't corporate PR channel. We're not sponsored, we're not gate kept, and we don't owe anyone a soft landing. But we're also not here to shout over our guests. I wanted them to feel comfortable enough to talk. I wanted you, the listener, to hear exactly how they frame themselves when they think they're in friendly territory. No gotchas, just honest questions, and some answers that might tell you as much by what's missing as what's there.
Well, and that's the rebel part. You give them the mic, but you don't let them control the narrative.
Uh, exactly. The underground isn't about refusing the conversation, it's about controlling the frame. And that's what we do here. But before we dive in, I really wanted to bring Brady on to share some big news about the community. How you doing, Brady?
Yeah, so I'm Brady and I'm the mods on our Psychonauts on Reddit. But the Discord, it was pretty bare bones when we started, but now we've expanded it by quite a bit. Our idea was to kind of create a place where our Psychonauts and then also the Patreon subscribers for Divergent States to kind of come to talk about a myriad of different subjects. So we'll be dropping the latest episodes in there. We got a forum just for people to discuss and kind of like just talk about the episodes that were dropped, as well as like maybe even posting some polls to get some feedback to see who the listeners want to like hear from next. And then there's of course like other things, like I have like a dedicated like art section where you can talk about like a bunch of random subjects. I also have like specific chats for specific types of recreational like medicine and stuff like that. So it's just we're kind of building on what we already have. And personally, I was talking to Lee, and Lee and I both kind of agreed that it would be kind of cool to maybe even turn this into just another benefit for the like different tiers for Divergent States, and having like your own little section if you are, say, like a thumbprint tier or something, that you can meet other people who are doing thumbprint tier and stuff. But honestly, my experience is that Discord is one of those things that it takes a little bit of work to get it to grow at the very beginning, but once it does, it literally takes off. And I'm hoping that it becomes a place that we can not only talk about like psychedelics, but also different interests that we have, or even discuss like music that we like to listen to while we're sober or not sober. So
Hmm.
anyways.
Great idea. I think it'll bring the community together between, even our Psychonaut. And if there's any listeners out there that aren't really familiar with the subreddit, they can come in and, we'll post the Discord link up in the sidebar. So everybody will have access. You can click on there and come in and, it'll be great. There's you've got like game sections in there, some voice chat sections, just a whole bunch of different stuff. Yeah. And then some of it's sectioned off, yeah, for the Patreon users. So if you want to come in and enjoy those parts, join, help, support independent media. So yeah, I'm really excited. It was really bare bones before. Now it looks great.
Hmm.
I really appreciate the work you've put into it.
Yeah, thanks, Brady. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian and Lee.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, man, I appreciate it. Was there any? What's your favorite part? Do you think is going to be your favorite part of the Discord server?
um Honestly, I mean, I'm looking forward to hearing some of the other Patreon users in person. Like, I want to get to know y'all, like, I want to build a community, like Lee was saying. I think it'll be interesting to see just kind of feedback happening within the Patreon space that the Redditors can kind of like make some connection to. I'm interested to see who people want to see on the show too. I think that's going to be really cool. But yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, there's just so much to dive into there. And if anybody's on the Discord or wants to check it out, I have a suggestion session there. Just feel free to like put a suggestion in there. I also have an ask the host section just set off for Lee and Brian, that if you just want to ask them a question, they'll get to it eventually, maybe. So we'll see. But
We'll get to it right away.
when we can.
But yeah, I think the last thing I just wanted to add this too, because I just thought about it. There is a section that's kind of roped off to Patreon subscribers, but I created a safe space, like some chat groups within there, and also some forums like that go over like veteran services when it comes to like, like psychedelic medicine, but also, if there's chats specifically set aside for like, if you're having a rough day or you're having a rough adventure and you need someone to talk to, and you can hop on there. I'm also going to get, hopefully in the next week, post some like helpful resources, maybe linking to fireside chat and stuff like that. That way if you don't think of anything else and you're online and you can think of this Discord, you can go to one place and find everything else that can help you out.
Oh, dude,
But
that's
yeah,
awesome.
anyways, thank you so much, Lee and Brian, for having me on today and giving me this opportunity to help kind of build your community. I've been really enjoying it so far.
Well, you're the real MVP, sir.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's why I appreciate it. I appreciate all the help with it and getting it off. I think it'll be a great, like I said, a good community building place where, people, it's like the official, Psychonaut Discord.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna reach out to Jade Cicada, which is what I've been using to help me build your Discord, but they have a custom bot over there, so I'm gonna try to get into contact with their people to see what they did to actually create something that works specifically for our Discord. Anyways, I'll get off that.
It's all good. I appreciate it, man. It's really cool. So yeah, well, we appreciate you being here today with us, Brady. It's great news coming from the Discord. So, man, we appreciate it, and we'll talk to you more soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, and yeah, just remember to look both ways before astro projecting across the universe. Thank you so much. Bye.
Great advice.
Great advice, man. So yeah, guys, thanks to Brady for coming on. The Divergent States Discord channel is now officially open for the entire Our Psychonaut community. The space for real conversations. We have harm reduction, trip reports, deep dives, and connecting with people who actually get it. So whether you're new to psychedelics or you've been walking this path for decades, you're welcome here.
Well, exactly. Like we said earlier, this isn't just a podcast. We're trying to start a movement. The Discord is where you can be part of it in real time. So links are in the show notes, and we can't wait to see you there.
Right. Let's get into this. Well, thank you very much. You got Dr. Steve Levine, Kabir Nath. Kabir is the CEO of Compass Pathways. And Dr. Levine, you are the pioneer in ketamine therapy and now Chief Patient Officer focused on equitable psychedelic care. Thank you guys for being here.
Thanks, Lee. It's a pleasure.
Let's see, Dr. Kabir, not doctor, I guess, I get so used to this. So Kabir, you've worked with some of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. What made you want to step into psychedelic care?
No, it's a great question. So before I came to Compass, and I've been here about 3 years now, I ran a company called Otsuka, which is a big company, shall we say, in the traditional neuropsychiatry space. And while I'm proud of everything we did at Otsuka, I also recognized that we really were not providing very good treatment options for so many people living with serious mental illness. So a few years ago, a team at Otsuka took a really hard look at psychedelics and quickly came to the conclusion that these could be potentially a powerful new therapeutic tool to use in traditional settings of care, recognizing that their potential goes much, much further than that. And with that, I was intrigued, interested, wanted to go somewhere I could make a difference. And that led me, via a long story, a couple of years later to Compass. And I'm very glad that I'm here and hopefully in a position to push forward these as a really interesting, powerful therapeutic modality appropriately used for patients.
So, Kabir, do you see Compass as a disruptor of the pharma model, or are you just a kind of a new kind of pharmaceutical company?
Well, I think we want to be a different type of company. So, while traditional pharmaceutical products, as I say, have been helpful in some ways, we recognize that in working with psilocybin, we're working with something very different, something that can't be approached in the typical way you would approach it in a pharmaceutical setting. We recognize also that, a psychedelic psilocybin, if we're successful in bringing it forward, very much needs to be integrated with the patient journey, that we need to have appropriate safeguards and so on in place. And that's why we're thrilled that Steve is with us with his experience, really to help ensure that we do that from a patient perspective.
Right. And then going to you, Steve, you've spent years, on the ground in ketamine clinics working with patients. What's the gap that you see that psychedelics can actually fill?
Part of the motivation to start making ketamine available clinically back in 2010 or so was, first in line with what Kabir said earlier about the recognition that there were major unmet needs for patients living with a variety of mental health conditions. I also was a bit dissatisfied with the way that care has become delivered in psychiatry, with typically a psychiatrist seeing a patient for a very short visit, a matter of a few minutes, and in many cases, care being disjointed. It's a very fragmented delivery landscape. And so first and foremost, I was interested in new models of care delivery and ones that really allow us to restore some of the humanity in mental health care, spend more time with patients, and deliver treatments to them that truly are transformative and can make a difference. And so with ketamine, in some ways, it seemed like an incremental improvement in the sense of, for some people, a rapid acting agent, maybe not quite as durable as we would hope, but a major limitation was access, because as a off-label treatment that in most cases wasn't directly covered by insurance, and the reality that most patients not only have trust in FDA-approved products, but rely upon their health insurance benefits. We can say lots about our healthcare system and some of the challenges there, but ultimately, most patients do rely upon those insurance benefits to access and afford their care. Clearly, ketamine was not going to be the answer. And so that, of course, led me to be interested in the more general concept of interventional psychiatry, focusing on building platforms to deliver FDA-approved treatments covered by insurance that have an evidence basis in treatment-resistant depression, but then, had the opportunity to join Compass Pathways and hopefully bring some of that experience of the challenges of creating equitable access to novel options in psychiatry to patients.
Okay, so when you think about success, to you, Dr. Levine, when you think about success, not just in clinical trials, but with patients, what does that look like for you?
If we look back to 2019, when S-ketamine was launched, the brand name Spravato, that there was a significant delay to getting to the patients who were waiting. That was for a number of reasons: the delivery infrastructure, the reimbursement infrastructure, a number of things weren't in place to quickly get to patients. So success to me would mean if we do get an FDA approval, that we don't have that lag in time. We don't have some of the same challenges to actually getting to all those patients who are waiting right now. There are about 3 million patients who have treatment-resistant depression in this country. Last year, only about 50 to 60,000 got S-ketamine, and something just north of 100,000 interventional psychiatry, period.
Yeah, that's a huge gap. So just to kind of get into Comp 360, Kabir, what actually makes your psilocybin therapy different from others in the pipeline? And what's something people misunderstand about your trial process?
Yeah, so we are using a proprietary synthetic form. So this is not, in fact, a natural product, and recognize that we can talk more about how that was at the foundation of the business model that we're working on. I think what people don't fully understand, because there's a lot of hype and so on in this sector, we are very clear that psilocybin is another tool that we want to make available to clinicians and patients, but that it's very much needs to be integrated as part of a patient journey. Specifically around that, there's been a lot of confusion around therapy and the role of therapy in psilocybin treatment. We completely understand that for many patients, therapy is an important component of their treatment journey. But we believe that with psilocybin at the sort of doses we are using, in the actual administration session, there is really very little role for a therapist. It's very much an inner directed experience at that time. But that's not to say that the patients will not benefit from that as part of a broader journey. And I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding about that and how we're positioning it.
Yeah, so is Compass, would you say it's positioning itself as to control the delivery ecosystem like therapists and clinics, or will it be more like an open source system?
Yeah, we are intending to deliver a drug, and we recognize that there are going to be many, many different settings of care where it's appropriately delivered. And indeed, a lot of what Steve works on is indeed to identify that and to build the ways in which COM360 could be potentially be delivered in a number of those different settings of care.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that's so, Steve, you're hearing directly from patients. What are the biggest hopes and fears that people bring up around psychedelic therapy for you right now?
Yeah, we hear from patients in a number of contexts. We work with patient advocacy organizations. We hold focus groups and community advisory boards to get patient input. We also, Kabir just alluded to this, have strategic collaborations with live sites of care delivery. And so we're taking all of these inputs to inform exactly as you asked. What is it that patients want? What are they missing in their care today? What are they concerned about as they look ahead and potentially have new options available to them? I think at this point, there's, just generally a recognition that there aren't enough tools, there aren't enough options, and everyone is hungry for more options. Beyond that, I think there's some awareness that there's been activity at, within state level programs. People, of course, are aware of going outside the country, even within the country for retreats. But I think for many patients, that is out of reach because those services are not covered by insurance, and likely they never could be. So I think that there is a growing recognition that the path to affordable access is through an FDA-approved and insurance-covered treatment. And I think there's awareness and great interest in there being broad coverage to ensure that this access is created.
Okay. Are there any like specific pricing models or access programs you guys are exploring to actually kind of break that down, those barriers?
So that's a great question, and we're not there yet. But first, as Steve said, the first priority is by getting an FDA-approved drug. We can actually then discuss with CMS, for Medicare, Medicaid coverage with commercial insurers and so on. But we will absolutely need to look at patient access foundations and so on for those who can't even afford co-insurance or co-pays, and that's all work that we need to do. And back to your earlier question, there are some of those elements, shall we say, of traditional pharma that we absolutely have to do and will be doing.
Yeah, I think there's some aspects that you really can't get away from in order to get that FDA approval, as you're saying. Or for Steve, as a former clinician, how are you making sure the Compass model isn't just clinically safe, but also culturally safe? Are you building harm reduction or trauma-informed practices directly into the protocols?
We'll be right back.
Hey, if you've made it this far and you're still listening, consider dropping us a follow. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, whatever you're listening on. If you can, leave a quick rating. It's free, takes just a second, and helps more people find the show. If you want to go further, it's just $5 a month on Patreon for ad-free episodes, bonus content, and the satisfaction of knowing you helped an old acid head build something worth listening to. All right, let's get back to it.
Probably the best example I can bring up would be how we approached our first PTSD study, the phase 2A study that we announced data from last year. Inherent in that design, it was first and foremost a safety study. We hadn't had prior experience delivering COMP360 in the way that we do for treatment-resistant depression to those who have a primary diagnosis of PTSD. And so the first question to answer was around the safety and tolerability of COMP360 in that population. And fortunately, the results were really encouraging and have really motivated us to move that PTSD program forward. But yes, beyond that, excuse me.
You're fine.
Yeah.
That's why it's so good to pre-record this stuff too. It's not live, so we can just cut this stuff out later.
Yeah, well, you're not catching me on my best day. I'm pretty sure right now.
Oh, sorry.
Nah, all good. Yeah, so beyond that, certainly in the design of how we safeguard patients within any of our studies with our psychological support, baked into that is an awareness of the potential comorbidities that our patients have, past history of trauma, the exploration of life events that could be relevant, because we do, of course, want to keep first and foremost at the heart of our studies the safety of patients and or our participants, but potentially post-approval patients.
Okay, so is there any meaningful community input shaping the model, or is it mostly coming from Compass and clinical partners?
From a number of inputs. We work with many stakeholders in the community, a number of major patient advocacy groups. We'll be expanding those with the development of our PTSD study. We have worked with patient communities, conducting focus groups and other engagements to learn from them. We, in terms of having broader input around diversity of our trials and special considerations for historically marginalized populations, working with groups like the Grady Trauma Project associated with Emory University. So yes, we are certainly motivated to gather inputs broadly to make sure that we're not just designing based upon our ideas of what good looks like, but actually the people living with these conditions.
That's good to know. Kabir, psychedelic medicine has deep indigenous and underground roots. Is Compass engaging with any of those communities as you scale?
We have had some of those discussions, but that again is work that we need to do more of. But Steve has had a number of those discussions in particular. So Steve, perhaps you want to comment on that.
I have, and several of us have, and they've been, very valuable engagements. They represent one pillar of a very broad group of stakeholders that we're gathering inputs from, and we also want to be very sensitive to the various contexts in which people are using psychedelics, and make sure that we are staying in our lane, if you will, with our approach to the FDA approval route and uptake within the existing healthcare system, so that important elements of context aren't lost along the way or added in inappropriately.
Yeah, and I think to build on Steve's point, we're aware that we only have a very limited set of capabilities ourselves, and we need to work with others and leverage those others for this to be successful.
Yeah, so how does Compass draw the line between honoring those traditions and being sure not to commercialize off them?
That's work that we are discussing and debating as we look towards. I mean, we are still some time away from an approval. Our focus right now is on execution, but we recognize that if we are fortunate enough to get to approval on a potential launch, that's more work that we need to do.
I think we also want to honor patient and healthcare provider choice. Right? Again, we will hopefully have an FDA-approved drug product and will manufacture, distribute that. The practice of medicine is outside the scope of what we can control or should control. And so we're hoping to create the basic framework of an approved product and something, again, that can be implemented within the healthcare system, leaving the latitude for patients and healthcare providers to design the type of delivery that makes most sense for them.
Right, and that's a good point to consider, to just, that you have that the one-on-one doctor care, I guess, because who would know better than, a person's personal physician. So yeah, that's a great point, just from you guys' point of view. So fast forward 5 or 10 years, what does the psychedelic treatment landscape look like for you guys? What's one thing that you guys think could derail that promise?
So I think the most important thing to us is, I mean, there are obviously a number of companies developing drugs, running clinical trials, and so on. I think it's essential that that's done in a very thoughtful way, where safeguarding patients and so on is centered to that. I think there was a time a few years ago, perhaps, when there were too many people trying to do some of this, and financial pressures have winnowed those out. There's now a smaller handful of companies, and I believe that all of us are doing this in a responsible and ethical way. But that, to me, is what's absolutely critical. There is a fragile basis of trust here, and we recognize that as companies developing commercial businesses, going for FDA approval, it can be fragile, and it's essential we don't abuse that. That's my view. Steve?
Yeah, in 5 to 10 years, hopefully there are multiple FDA-approved products, not just ours. There is this huge unmet need across a number of conditions. And of course, psychedelic treatments are being explored in a variety of them today. So hopefully we have multiple products that we are better addressing the current unmet needs for these patients. And as Kabir said, in terms of what could derail that or the hazards along the way, I think in the recognition that there's such a pressing unmet need, that we don't go too fast or cut corners in some way, that we maintain a commitment to rigorous science so that we understand the potential benefits, but also the potential risks as these move into larger populations.
Yeah. And as Steve said earlier, we recognize that in clinical trials, it's by definition, it's a narrow protocol. It is a selected group of patients and so on. And again, it's not our job to dictate ultimately the use of these, the protocols, how they relate with each other and so on. And I very much hope to see over the next 5 to 10 years, sufficient use across a broad range of population that we have a much better idea at an individual patient level of what may be most effective.
Right. I think that's one of the lessons learned from just even the past. Timothy Leary kind of went on his spree across America, is they decide, oh, well, everybody needs this now. And so by doing it correctly and going through FDA approval, you can kind of bring in that, back to what it should be, I guess. So what's one thing you wish the psychedelic community better understood about Compass's role in all this?
That it truly is a broad church, that we are just one of the components of it. We deeply understand the fact that we need to and will always coexist with a number of other ways of delivering psychedelic medicines. We come back to why we chose to do what we're doing, which is in a world where unfortunately what's generally available today is out of pocket and people have to pay for, and we see it continuing that way for a very long time. We believe that getting FDA approval and meeting those patients who are where they are today in the healthcare system. And again, as Steve said earlier, this is not to defend the current delivery of psychiatric medicines as being perfect in any way. But there are hundreds of thousands, millions of patients in the US who are within that system, under the care of psychiatrists within that system, who today do not have access to any tools that can help them. And that's where we want to be. But we're just one part of the story. Steve?
Yeah, I just echo that. We don't pretend to have all the answers or be the solution for every problem in the healthcare system, but we're taking the approach we're taking because, today we believe that this is, even if it's long, expensive, difficult work, it's ultimately the fastest route to potentially bring new options to patients in a way that they can afford.
Yeah, that's very important with anything. And, I've talked to several guests, and it's kind of been I guess really the consensus among a lot of everyone, my guest, is, FDA approval is really just the path to get it affordable, because then, insurance can kick in. And in our current system, there's just no way around it. So, yeah, well, thank you guys for coming on here with me and speaking with me. Had a few technical issues this time, but not as bad as last time, it seems. But yeah, I want to thank you for coming on. I appreciate you guys coming. Yeah, and we if we get any more follow-up questions or want to talk, we'll send them and hopefully talk in the future.
No, Lee, thank you very much for the invitation. And absolutely, we'd be delighted to. I mean, hopefully Compass is going to be around for the long term,
Right.
moving things forward. So yeah, Steve and I would love to come back, at your convenience. But thank you for the invitation and the time.
Thank you for
You're
having
welcome.
us.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Thank you so much. All right, so that was Compass Pathways. I'm still kind of amazed we pulled that off.
Yeah, I mean, dude, you didn't exactly like give him any softballs, but you also didn't go for the jugular either.
Right. Well, I wanted to give them kind of a space to where they could, in their own words, and in their words, there's a lot to unpack. They repeated a lot. We're working on it still, or we're working on it. And that lack of specifics on access and pricing, careful distancing from cultural roots. If you listen closely, you heard it.
Well, and for me, I think the most telling thing was how often they positioned the FDA approval as the path to affordability, like it's a guarantee.
Exactly. We all know FDA approval is important for insurance coverage, but that's not really the magic bullet for equity. Here's where our independence matters. We can say that without worrying about losing a sponsor or getting disinvited from the big conferences. That's the advantage of being on the outside the machine. We can speak plainly.
Yeah, that's the real rebel position. It's not about being anti everything, it's about keeping the conversation honest with the big players who would rather smooth over the edges, if you will.
Right. I mean, exactly. That's what we make the edges stay visible. So I'm curious, what did you hear in their answers? Let us know. If you drop in the Discord, you want to unfiltered debrief Brian and I recorded, hop over to Patreon. And that's where we'll really get into it.
Well, I'm going to throw an olive branch out there too, because we've been pretty hard on these guys. I appreciate them coming on and talking with us and engaging in the community. So
I 100%. I thank Kabir and Dr. Levine for coming on. And I mean,
absolutely.
that we're an unknown small podcast. I could have just roasted them or,
Yeah.
gone after them the whole time, but I wanted to hear what they'd say on their terms.
Well, I guess all of you out there that are listening to us, maybe you should go into the Reddit or the subreddit. Can tell I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Go into the
it's all good.
subreddit. Go into the subreddit and tell us what you think.
Right. Leave a comment on this post. It's going to be sticky to the top of the subreddit all month. Drop a comment on Discord. Now it's open for everybody. Or heck, I mean Spotify, Apple. Yeah, I don't know. Can you do comments on Apple?
I think on Apple you can do comments. Spotify you can't.
No, they just opened it. You can now
Oh, they
comment.
did?
Yeah, you can comment on Spotify. I've been just thinking about throwing some polls and stuff up on there. And
Yeah.
hey, if you guys comment up there, I'll reply to you. So hit us up.
Yeah. comment, tell us if we suck, tell us if we're awesome, tell us everything.
Right.
Anything that you can think of. You're like, dude, you need to add DS or whatever. If you're an audio guy, say something. If you're a musician, send us some music.
Speaking of which, I want to add this up in the further outro. And we want to special thank Dill Alien. He's been recording music just for us. So, dude, thank you. He's been a big supporter of the show. You guys check him out. He's a great musician, fun guy to be around, talk to.
Super
good
fun
friend.
guy.
Yeah, good friend for both of us. So to both of us. So yeah, you guys
100%.
check him out. He just dropped a new album. Just got back from like a tour in Europe. So yeah, check out Dill Alien. He's been hooking us up with music. And if you got your own music, hit us up. Divergent States, at gmail.com. Hell, hit me up on the subreddit if you got it. You got some music, send it to us. We'd love to feature you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you guys follow us on, everybody follow us on Discord, follow us on the Patreon, keep the independent media alive. I mean, there's not many of us out here, this psychedelic independent media.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing I'm really seeing out of all of it is almost all of them are attached to some company or some organization, and that's all of it's coming through there.
Mm-hmm.
We're really one of the only ones out there that are truly independent psychedelic media. So yeah, if you guys want to support that, go to patreon.com, Divergent States, sign up, less than a cup of coffee. Psychedelics can take you deep, but you don't have to go at it alone. Fireside Project is your trusted companion on the psychedelic path. If you're having a tough trip, their free, anonymous support line is just a call or text away at 62-FIRESIDE. Planning a journey? Fireside certified coaches offer personalized video sessions to help you prepare and integrate, starting with a free 20-minute consult. Whether you're on the path, in the middle of it, or just getting started, Fireside is here for you. Learn more at firesideproject.org.